are the Legion of the Beast.
Would you like a drink, sir?
I think hair loss is the least of my problems right now.
They turned him into an Ood.
Yep.
This way! Come on, run! Kill them.
Hello and welcome back to another entry in the History of series. Taking a break from all the Time Lords and myths, today we'll be taking a look at the hive mind species native to a planet not too far from the Sense Sphere, the Ood. So without further ado, let's get right into their story. The Ood were a peaceful herd race native to the Ood Sphere. In one alternative to his infiltration of Linda, the Absorbaloff had absorbed an Ood, a Slitheen, a Krillitane, and Mrs. Paku into his torso in addition to humanoid faces which he had absorbed prior to joining Linda. In the 2010s, an Ood was a resident of the hidden Trap Street in London under the protection of Mayor Me. It appeared cloaked in human form as it performed maintenance on a Cyberman. In the 39th century, humanity discovered the Ood, enslaved them, and used them to perform menial tasks throughout the three galaxies of the Second Great and Bountiful Human Empire. The external hindbrain of the Ood was extracted by Ood Operations and replaced with their translator globes. With their connection to the central Ood brain severed, they followed the orders of humans. Ood Operations kept this procedure a secret from the rest of humanity, spreading the belief that the Ood were naturally servile and offered themselves for servitude. One Ood slave ended up wandering Callous and fell under the influence of the War Master, delivering a phone to people he wanted to communicate with in the colony. A group of Ood were bought by Martine and Cassandra King and smuggled onto Callous to work in the Sueño mine. Their sanity was affected by the Sueño, resulting in one having to be shot. When the colonists began turning against the mine, a few Ood were lynched. They continued working in the mine after the Master helped the Kings by giving them telepathic inhibitors to protect them from the Sueño's influence. The Master put all of the Ood under his influence, preventing them from helping Cassandra when Governor Turamon's forces invaded the planet, and later ordered them to kill everyone in the colony, allowing him to take the Sueño for the Time Lords. One Ood was bought prior to the hindbrain operation by the Lesser Order of Oberon. They did the operation themselves and brutally trained the Ood into an assassin. He eventually killed the entire guild and began working by himself, under the name of Brian, until a contract led him to meet the 8th Doctor on Athana, resulting in him falling into the Time Vortex. After a nudge by the 10th Doctor's TARDIS, he ended up in the Dark Times, and joined the 10th Doctor against the combined forces of the 8th Doctor and the Daleks, as well as the 9th Doctor and Great Vampires. In the conclusion of the Kotura Crisis, Brian decided to settle on Beringi in the Dark Times. By the 43rd century, it was claimed that every human had an Ood servant. They were generally barely regarded as being alive, and were thus considered expendable. Despite this, an activist group, Friends of the Ood, lobbied for the cause of their freedom. Jack Harkness refused to keep an Ood at this time, as he claimed he didn't like having servants. In 43K2.1, the Ood were being used for menial labour on Sanctuary Base 6 on Krop Tor. The Ood knew of prophecies regarding the Beast, which the Walker expedition would later discover. The Beast possessed the Ood and made them into his legion in order to besiege the human party of the operation. They were defeated when Danny Bartok, the expedition member in charge, broadcast a telepathic flare which reduced their field to basic zero. This created a brainstorm which caused them to collapse. However, their telepathic field began to reassert itself after a time. When the 10th Doctor broke the gravity field that kept Krop Tor in orbit around the black holes K37 Gem 5, the Doctor was only able to make a single trip in the TARDIS to rescue Ida Scott from suffocation, and so was unable to save any of the Ood on the base now free from the Beast's control. All perished, but were given posthumous honours. In 4126, the 10th Doctor and Donna Noble visited the Ood Sphere. They found Ood Operations and decided to investigate the Ood origins. At the same time, the red-eye disease was becoming more and more common among the Ood. They discovered that the disease was caused by the Ood brain's subconscious reasserting itself over the Ood thanks to the efforts of a spy from Friends of the Ood. Ood Operations head, Kleiman Halpern, was unwillingly transformed into an Ood after consuming years of hair tonic contaminated with Ood graft by his own Ood servant, Ood Sigma. The Doctor deactivated the field that was suppressing the Ood's brain's telepathy, and it sent out a song that was heard by everyone across the 3 galaxies. Humanity, now in possession of the truth, returned their former slaves to the Ood sphere, where they were set free and allowed to live in peace. Circa 4226, the Ood's development had been unnaturally enhanced, allowing them to build an entire civilization and extended their mental powers. At the same time, the Ood had nightmares of the Saxon Master and of time bleeding. In response, they sent out Ood Sigma to 2059 to contact the 10th Doctor. He eventually arrived on the Ood sphere and telepathically connected to the Ood Council. When he saw the Master, he immediately returned to the 21st century to investigate. The Ood watched him, and when he finally began to die, they telepathically sang to him. In the 52nd century, an Ood worked for Dorium Maldovar. It was the only member of staff left in the Maldovarian after Dorium left in a hurry, discreetly foiled by a raid gang of thieves. In the 67th century, a vid briefing series entitled Perils of the Constant Division provided information on, amongst others, the Ood. At some point, an Ood, later named Nephew, had been transported by a time rift to a bubble universe, where he was severely injured from the journey. He was repaired and controlled by House, to use as a medium to drain another's soul and mind for his plans to remove TARDIS matrices. Unlike the other residents on top of House, Auntie and Uncle, Nephew was brought along by House when it took over the Doctor's TARDIS, using him to try and kill Amy and Rory. Nephew was destroyed when the 11th Doctor and Idris landed the junk TARDIS on him, ripping him apart at the atomic level. The Doctor lamented briefly that Nephew was yet another Ood that he failed to save. An Ood was assimilated by the Borg at some point. At least one Ood was abducted and sent to face its fear in the Minotaur's prison ship. At one point, Albert Einstein was brought to the TARDIS and accidentally turned into an Ood by experimental liquid. However, the 11th Doctor was able to reverse this, but the chemical itself gained sentience. The 11th Doctor rescued an Ood from the Androvax conflict with the intent of returning him to the Ood sphere, but the Ood escaped from his TARDIS and took refuge in the home of Amy and Rory. For the next month or so, the Ood insisted on acting as the couple's butler until the Doctor was able to retrieve him. Ood were used as the prison wardens of Valderon after the telepathic criminal influenced her sentences, knowing she could telepathically influence the Ood to aid her eventual escape. Valderon escaped after Jenny and Noah's arrival in her cell, and the Ood followed her to Waltham Abbey in the 21st century, taking over humans to aid in their search. Jenny eventually exposed Valderon, enabling the Ood to depart with their prisoner. The Ood of the Ood sphere had a trade agreement with the Sensorites of the Sense sphere. When Susan Foreman visited the Sense sphere during the last Great Time War, the first elder of the Sensorites was away negotiating at the Ood sphere. Several Ood worked in the claims department of Psychic Paper Inc. The 11th Doctor once had multiple Ood on his TARDIS. When the Ood received upgrades to their communicators, they stopped serving the Doctor, Amy and Rory and began playing bird-throwing games and trolling the Doctor on his Twitter about his 11th incarnation not being as good as his 10th. The 12th Doctor dressed an Ood in a Clara Oswald costume for Clara's surprise birthday party on board the Doctor's TARDIS. An Ood was on Florana when Amy, Rory and the 11th Doctor went there for a summer holiday. An Ood was present in the Maldovarian when Colony Sarf visited searching for the 12th Doctor. An Ood, whom the Doctor named Bonnie, was imprisoned in the Judoon's maximum security facility along with the 13th Doctor. Bonnie shared a cell with a Sycorax, aptly named Clyde. One morning, when she greeted them, the two merely growled at the Doctor in reply. An Ood owned by the Division, who served Tech-Dayun, showed the state of Universe 1 influenced by the Flux to the Doctor. During the second Flux event, once the Doctor had successfully lured Swarm and Azure away, the Ood did the best that he could to minimise the Flux at the Doctor's request, giving the Doctor and her friends a better chance of stopping it. And that is the story of the Ood, one where on many occasions the Doctor was unable to save them and release them from servitude, but when he did, it changed the entire galaxy. It's also a word that is really difficult to say over and over again. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, then consider leaving a like and subscribing down below, as it really helps out the channel, especially in this current blistering heat. But as always, thanks for watching.